We are live. I'm just going to give probably 30 seconds to let more people join in, and then we can get started. I hope my internet is stable until I can hand this over to Sean. Hello, friends. Welcome to Be Waste Wise. I am Shweta Dandapani. I'm one of the community builders on Be Waste Wise. We host at least 2 webinars every month on several topics related to waste and sustainability and the circular economy. Today, we have Xian Yang, who's a co-founder of CL Environmental Solutions, as the moderator of the webinar. The topic for the webinar is the future of food rescue in the Caribbean. In case you have not seen other webinars of Xian before, please head to the webinar section on our website. You will find that Xian has been moderating several webinars touching upon topics in the Caribbean for the last 3 years. And even the older ones are still relevant, so please go watch them. We have Miguel Gutierrez, who's the CEO of Food Bank of Quintana Roo, and Derek E. Lukpat, who's a co-founder and director of Fed Up Caribbean Limited. I am looking forward to a very interesting discussion today. I hope all of you are as well. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A section to share your questions. The speakers will take them up as and when they come up. Over to you, Xian.
Thank you so much, Swetha, and hello and welcome everyone. You know, always these sessions, I want you to feel the warmth of the Caribbean region, and today is no exception. So as Swetha mentioned, and I'll reiterate this here, and she's going to do it in the chat as well, please put your questions in the Q&A box. As a moderator, it allows me to operate a little bit more efficiently, so I don't have to be checking in the chat and the Q&A. You can feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat, because I always like knowing who is joining us on the call. So feel free to share your name, your title, and where you are joining us from. So today's webinar, again, is continuing in our thrust to expand awareness around food loss and food waste in the Caribbean region. And we are focusing on food rescue and food donation. As Swetha said, I am Shan Kofi-Young. I'm the founder and CEO of CL Environmental Services. We are a social enterprise specializing in food and organic waste management, training, education, and consultancy. And so as part of, you see my avocado behind me, isn't he cute? Okay, so this session also falls within our Do Waste Good Food program. We have a saying here in Trinidad and Tobago, and it varies across the region: better belly bust than good food waste, meaning it's better you eat everything that you have rather than waste good food. And so as a part of that program, we are having our discussion today. So across the islands, we know that the reality that too much perfectly good, edible, nutritious food is lost every single day, while families and communities and frontline organizations can put it to good use. So today we're all about shifting that reality from learning from 2 important organizations, my colleagues in this space, who are already proving that it is possible and who are championing the cause as well. So we're taking an awareness-focused approach, yes, but we're also, I have some really pointed questions for them. So if you want to get started tomorrow, all right, you can get going almost immediately, because we want you to understand how your organization, how your business can get involved in food donation and food rescue, no matter the size of your organization. So we have 2 amazing guests joining me today. We have Miguel Gutierrez from BAMX, Bancos de Alimentos de Mexico, based in Quintana Roo, and so he's my Latin American guest today. He's the director of one of the most established and impactful food banking networks. And then we have my colleague and good friend, Derek Lukpat, who is the co-founder and director of Fed Up Caribbean, a digital platform helping businesses divert their surplus food at discounted rates instead of wasting it. So together, They bring a world of experience from looking at the food banking sector and how that works and how we could probably bring some of the learnings into the region and using tech. I'm a huge advocate for incorporation of technology into our models moving forward. So I want us to start off with, so Miguel, my first question is for you.
Yes.
Yeah, so BAMX is actually one of the bigger food banks across right? Across Latin America and the Caribbean. And so from your experience, like what is the biggest misconception that some businesses have about donating food? I know we were having a little pre-discussion ahead of the actual launch, so feel free to mention that as well, because I think that's pertinent in your answer here. And what do you think are some of the things that you can do to help them move past that?
Yeah. Thank you for having me. Good day for everyone. I think this is a fundamental question because it touches a sensitive issue. We were working before we get live that a lot of business owners think of their protecting their brand, so they have legal issues. And also, I think another idea is we have enough food for everyone, and that's not right. No, I think that's the two biggest misconceptions. We're trying to overcome this by changing the narrative from getting rid of the leftover to safe social investments. We like to, or we try to demonstrate that our food bank and the 59 food banks in Mexico acts as a professional quality filter. We assume operational responsibility. We protect their brands and guarantee that the food arrives in perfect condition for the needed people. When they understand that, they beginning to change the way that they see us. No, they think about we're a certified logistic partner, and we're not just another charity that the recipient and maybe the fears begins to disappear from their minds. Additional in Mexico, the BAMEX read in 2019, I think so. They achieved a historic milestone, influencing public policy. We have in our general health law explicitly in one article says that the last distributor will be jointly liable. So that kind of withdraw the objection from their narrative. And I think we invite them to know our bodega and see how we work, all the different certifications that we have, and help them and start to offer in a professional logistic partnership. I think that's the way that we're doing here in Mexico. And also another one that have a pump an idea. I think that we must show them and understand that throwing away food is the real risk, not the donated. So I think that's the key answer.
And I mean, I love that. And the fact that I didn't realize that Mexico had so many food banks, 59.
59.
I mean, we are from our experience, Miguel, we're coming from really small countries. Trinidad has a population almost 1.5 million. Jamaica is almost 2.8 million. You know, we could in some of the cities in Mexico, that's like a neighborhood. Right? And so when we think of food banks and we think of the work of a food bank, it is amazing to hear that in Mexico, the policy says that the last distributor, which in most cases is the food bank, is the one that assumes the responsibility. So you no longer, as a supermarket, as a hotel, you no longer have that liability on your shoulders.
Yeah.
Across the region, we only have two countries that have what we will call Good Samaritan laws, which mimics those laws in the US. So we have Barbados and the Bahamas that have initiated these programs to encourage food donation and food rescue. And so we want the rest of the region to jump on board and to get that going. And you're right, food banks are the logistical partner of these organizations. So that's amazing to hear. So Derek, over to you. One of the things that I love about the work of Fed Up Caribbean is that You're making things visible and accessible using the power of technology for consumers. So what are some of the things that you have learned, whether positive or negative? Feel free to add both ends of the spectrum about the work of your platform, some of the things that you may have had to navigate to try to get people on board, because I know how incredibly difficult it has been for you. And what are some of the fears that people have expressed with getting this surplus food at these discounted prices?
Thanks, Chan. So, well, good morning, good afternoon, evening to those who have joined, and of course, Fed Up Caribbean appreciates the opportunity. So thanks to Be Waste Wise for having this webinar. We are still navigating those challenges for sure. We are, I would say, still at the startup phase. We've been actively in business for a little over a year now, and it has been quite difficult in getting our target market, which would be we take a socioeconomic approach. So we're targeting the food retail sector, all the way from farmers and vendors, all the way up to supermarket chains, restaurants, bakeries, caterers, food manufacturers, etc. The fact is that, and just for a little context, as you correctly said, the Caribbean is one of the more vulnerable regions. And when you look at the statistics on the FAO and you look at the levels of food insecurity in the Caribbean, even worse off than the general Caribbean and Latin America, it's astonishing. We import significant amounts of food as well. Yet when you look at the organic waste that is being, and good food that is being thrown away, it's a dilemma. It just does not make sense. And I have to confess that I have been part of that food sector. I've worked in food manufacturing companies, food distribution, import and distribution, restaurant chains, etc., and have personally overseen the disposal of, I would say, yeah, it'll run into tons of food over the years. So I do understand the challenge there, and Miguel touched on it, in that the mindset of most businesses is that we can tolerate some waste. And in many cases, like supermarkets, is they push it back on the distributors. It's their problem to deal with. So while there's activity to try and minimize food waste, inevitably there is. And typically it's dumped before it actually is not good to eat. So there's these best before dates or best by dates and so on and so forth. But yes, there's a significant amount of concern and focus over brand reputation, legal liability, food safety, and those are valid concerns. So our job is how to bring that reassurance to those businesses that what you're doing not only makes social sense in terms of getting this food either discounted or donated, but it makes economic sense as well. There's a significant amount of cost that is lost, value that is lost when you throw away food that has been, the raw materials procured, the effort taken to produce it, package it, distribute it, merchandise it, then to take it and throw it away. Especially in a context with a food insecure region, we saw this as a problem to be solved. And we recognize that that is one of the major areas, that mindset, that is a big barrier to overcome. And the second major area as well is, of course, to try and get policy to evolve, because a number of our legislation and regulations are, I would say, outdated. So you have those two major barriers. So we understand we need to chip away at it. We also need to lead by example, which is why we've moved forward to bring solutions to the table, including that technology platform, which has been very difficult to launch, I will admit. But last point quickly is that recently we've started to get, and Miguel probably knows this better than I do, as well as you, Shan, perseverance and consistency You just have to be at it and tackle it from different angles. Take that and because we believe in it, we're passionate about it. We are steadfast in just going back at it and using opportunities like this to educate decision makers, directors, policy makers, people who could say, hey, let me look deeper into this and let's have a conversation around it. So we are starting to get some very encouraging feedback from retailers, businesses who want to pilot some of the initiatives.
Shan,
Sorry,
you're on
Shan.
mute.
Yeah.
You're on
Yep.
mute.
Sorry, two things came out of what you just said there. One is it is important for people to remember that when you waste food, you also waste all of the resources that it took to make that food. And you gave the whole list of things there. I think that's something that people often forget. And another point that you and Miguel both brought up is the importance of having the support of policy. Some of my colleagues in Spain and France, in the US, the Good Samaritan laws, these things help drive the adoption of food donation and food rescue programs much more than we are appealing to people's morals and values and hoping that their connection to sustainability remains the driving force moving forward. But we also know a lot of these people run businesses. Miguel Edward, I remember talking to a supermarket and they practice what is called soil and dump. So they'll take the perfectly good food, they'll soil it with bleach or with a disinfectant, and then they will throw it away. And so they've been doing that for years. That is mind-boggling to me. But that is a common practice, unfortunately. So I want to come back to you again, Miguel, with another question, tie right back into your work with supermarkets and farmers and so on and manufacturers across Mexico. What are some of the practical systems or habits that you have seen that for those that you've worked with, what has helped them make their food donation smooth and consistent? Give us some ideas of what we could adopt in not only in the Caribbean region, but for those of us who are listening on the call. I see friends from Jamaica, I see friends from Cameroon joining us. What are some of the good habits that you've seen working with some of these organizations, so that way we can get some tips and pointers and applications in our region?
Thank you, Shan. I think that one of the key practices that we're imposing or forwarding here in Mexico is transparency and traceability of the donations, because they don't go to a secondary market. We receive for the needed people, and also I think a difference. And I'm going to try to explain me. Here in Mexico, the Red Bamex that has an office to work for this 59 food banks in different kind of alliances, in observing the interest of the donator. So there we receive from in-kind donations to social investments or infrastructure donations. I think also formal alliances and agreements nationwide that of trust, obviously, between the food banks and the donors, with definite logistics routes and schedules and savings for the donors. Derek was saying that maybe the markets given back to the seller. I think that is one of the key practices. Also, here in Mexico, we have something that is called Pacto of the Food. That is an ambitious voluntary agreement that aims to bring together organizations through all the food and beverage production chains, from producers to consumers, and make food and beverage production and consumption systems more sustainable. You have to donate perfect. You don't have to donate this week. Don't worry. We see it on the next week. So there's no commitment. And that's the principal objection is to avoid loss on food waste. No. Also, we're trying to involve the companies and the hotel staff. I think giving them some facts that how can they not throw away the food. That's also interesting. Here for the hotels and restaurants industry, we have an app. We use a technology to coordinate the donation in real time between the hotel or restaurants and maybe an institution that needs the money. Also, I think that give them some kind of tax benefits to withdraw from their inventory is going to help them to understand that we're going to have some tax benefits, no, and try to increase the consistency and the volume of donation. And in fact, I have the opportunity to be in Monday on the Costa Rican Food Bank, and we were discussing and chatting about a strategic cold cuts partner here in Mexico that significantly increased their donation volumes. It also have operation in Costa Rica, and we have a national-wide agreement by the Red Bamex that help us all the states to receive the donations. And in Costa Rica, they don't have that right now. So I think that's a difference. Maybe to work with all the supermarkets brands, and they have just to communicate with one partner that is the Red Bamex, and we all the food banks give them the information, the traceability, and the transparency information. So it's very quick to receive information and know what becomes with her donation to us.
Yeah, I like that you talked about a singular. So Red Bamex is the central coordinator for all of the other food banks. So what happens is that the companies will go to Red Bamex and say, okay, we want to donate. And then based on where they're located, then they will connect them with the most appropriate food bank, for logistics. And then I love the traceability so that you can get to see what happens from when it leaves you and it gets to whether it's the food pantry or the church or whoever the households or whoever needs the food. I like that transparency and traceability as well. I think those two words are really critical when it comes to food donation, because in waste we have what we call our the word is evading me now, but I'll describe it. We're chain of custody. So basically what happens when the waste leaves my organization and gets to your facility for treatment? How do you track that? How do I know that you've disposed of it appropriately and you're not just driving on the side of the road and dumping it, So it's similar. And I like the fact that Red Bamex does that for organizations as well. And just as a reminder, guys, thank you for those who just joined us. We are having a conversation with Miguel Gutierrez from Bancos de Alimentos in Mexico. And also Derek Lupat, the co-founder and director of Fed Up Caribbean, and we're discussing food donation and food rescue in the region. So Derek, my next question for you. You both talked about the use of technology, right? And how that is helping your work to move a little bit smoother, a little bit better. What are some of the features of the app, Derek, for Fed Up Caribbean that you use to help make the food donation and food rescue possible? For those of you who missed it, Derek and I, if the accent sounds similar, it's because we're both from Trinidad and Tobago, right? What are some of the features of the app that people on the call could be aware of? And what are some of the potential partnerships that you see are useful for you in expanding across, because your name is Fed Up Caribbean, right? It's not Fed Up Trinidad and Tobago. So the goal is to be able to expand across the region, right? So what are some of the partnerships that you look forward to forming that you haven't formed yet, and share some of the features of the app as well. And especially in those areas where you see logistics and consistency being major challenges. So over to you, Derek.
No, thanks for the question. So we have a number of different solutions with different types of technology. So the app is one that we are in the process of rolling out and piloting after I would say a difficult start with the first iteration. We've actually partnered with another organization to roll out what we see as a more effective app. The beauty about this app is that of course, the intention is to facilitate the reduction of surplus food waste by having that digital platform to bring vendors and users together of all levels. The nice thing about it is that the vendor account and the user account, you're able to trace over time, based on the transactions over the app, how much food you save from going to the landfill. The vendor could see it in terms of dollar value. Both sides could see it in terms of weight, and there is a CO2 equivalent calculator. So even as a business, you can incorporate that into your ESG reporting for those who are inclined that way. As an individual, you could also, be proud to show that, hey, over a particular period in time, I have been able to get food that is less expensive, so I've saved money. I have contributed to reducing pollution and reducing emissions. So these are things that we want to make cool and popular, as opposed to some of the other things that people tend to be more interested in. The other technology, other solutions we have are more B2B, business to business oriented. So we have an agency for commercial organic waste dehydrators, because you also have a situation where inevitably you will have waste, and instead of just throwing that away into the to get into landfills, taking up space in your facility, and of course creating challenges with pests and odors, this technology allows you to reduce the weight volume by up to 90%, and then use that as a soil amendment for composting, for landscaping, etc. It has many, many applications. So our focus, while it's on food, it is part of helping the Caribbean move to a more transition to a more circular economy, which is something that you're seeing happening in a number of countries, especially Europe, France notably, Brazil, Japan, South Korea. A number of countries have recognized that, why are we wasting so much things? Food being one of the more important ones. The Caribbean, there's a lag that, of course, companies like you and I are trying to close. But we also recognize that, look, this is a transition. It requires us to bring solutions that could integrate into the day-to-day businesses. So the app, the commercial food dehydrators, and we are even piloting some shelf life extension technology, so to speak, food safe, that helps to reduce the ripening process for things like fruits and some forms of produce. So we're taking a very pragmatic approach. We recognize that, yes, there's a lot of social good, but it makes business sense. It's just to businesses typically look at their business only. So whether you are a food manufacturer, a retailer, a supermarket, you tend to look at your business. But more and more organizations do need to recognize that, look, I have my activities, my supply chain, and the products that I put out into the market, whether they're my products or whether I'm distributing for someone, have an impact. So that mindset has to shift in things that can be called extended producer responsibility, which you're hearing more and more about. Because the fact is, when executives, managers walk out of their business at the end of a workday, you walk into the same environment and the same society as everyone else. So companies, especially the bigger ones and the people that are more senior, that they should bear more responsibility for the activities of their business. And that especially when it comes to food, how can you as a business, yes, let's say, be profitable, yet at the same time, you have people in your community that are having difficulty getting food to eat. Those things just don't make sense. So getting that across especially to business people and policymakers in a pragmatic way, because they have other concerns to worry about as well. It's not only about do good, feel good type of thing. They have really to deal with, which Miguel would have mentioned in terms of brand reputation, legal liability, food safety concerns, etc. Those are real issues. So the technology helps to bring some measure of consistency, standards on quality, measurement, traceability, as you said, chain of custody, those things. They want that reassurance that, hey, I'm willing to do something beyond the borders of my business, but I need to do it in a way that doesn't put me and my business and my staff and my shareholders at risk.
Yeah, and I love that. I think for a lot of those bigger businesses, the responsibility often falls on the consumer, right? They love to pass it on, but they forget that extended producer responsibility is real, and that you do have a role to play. You do have to take responsibility for what is happening along your supply chain. As you rightfully said, yes, you have many things being tossed at you every single day. And some things, I always remember this book I read when I was in secondary school called Animal Farm, where one of the lessons was that all things are important, but sometimes some things are more important than others. And often you always have a juggling act, but it does not still mean that you cannot pay attention to this aspect of your work and just turn a blind eye, out of sight, out of mind. And this time it's both sight, S-I-T and S-I-G-H-T, right? One of the things that, Miguel, one of the things I want to bring you back into the conversation here, one of the things that I wanted to ask, just on average, is like, how many staff members does the average food bank in Mexico, like one of the Bamex banks, like on average, how many staff members are there? And do you also have people who volunteer? I wanted to ask you that, Miguel.
I can speak for our two banks. We have 48 personal members, and we also have like 100 volunteers that daily visit us and help us to do the things. I know that in Mexico are food banks from 9-10 people to food banks that have almost 100 people, and we believe in the volunteer working because that's one way to involve the community, and first to acknowledge the problem of the food and lost waste. We work with a lot of universities and high schools to the young people begin to understand and participate in this problem that we have as a society. So that with between 9 to 10 people to almost 100 people, and a lot of volunteer work that we love that when they visit us.
Yeah, I saw that. I volunteered at the Maryland Food Bank in the US. And that's one of the things that they spoke about, the importance. They love their volunteers. I mean, I don't think they could have done a lot of what they're able to do without them. There are some who are there every single day consistently. You'll find that those are the retired folk who just want to continue to help and continue to be useful. But I wanted to ask that because I didn't want to underscore that, yes, even though you have staff, the importance of volunteerism and having people come and support your organizations in that way as well. So one of the, and I'm going to stick with you, Miguel, so one of the, and before I ask Miguel this question, guys, remember that you also have the opportunity to ask us questions in the Q&A box. So I'm going to be checking there periodically for your questions as well. So if you have any questions for Miguel or for Derek, please feel free to use the Q&A box in the room, right? So Miguel, you know, one of the things that you mentioned from the first question that I asked was about the legislation and the fact that there exists legislation in Mexico that protects the supermarket, the hotel, you know, the whatever of the donating organization, you know, and so based on the journey in Mexico, if you could stretch your mind back, you know, that far, because in the Caribbean region, we don't have food donation policies or strong legal protections just yet. And I am the eternal optimist, so I hope that that is going to happen soon. But based on Mexico's journey, you know, like what are some of the early steps that governments or Caribbean governments or industries can take to build a supportive environment that encourages more food donation and more food rescue?
I think one of the first recommended steps includes, and I think it's very important to have scientific studies developed by our local university to understand the state or the municipality reality of food waste through all the food chain. Here in Mexico, only 2 states of the 31 have that kind of studies. We're here in Quintana Roo. If you see the geography in 160 kilometers of our coast, we have the 11% of the hotel rooms in all Mexico. And that demonstrates the power of the industry, of the hospitality industry. And I think we have a great opportunity and also a challenge. We're seeking resources from our state governor to conduct that study across all the supply chain about the food and food waste. I think also when you begin to work in a legislation, must to first one protect the Good Samaritan donors and try to make it simple to understand that for the companies and producers, the offsetting overall the logistical cost, I think is crucial to ensure that the law incentivates rather than punish it. Using force will only make it difficult to get allies to join us. So we must move from donation based on conscience through convenience. Do you understand that it's convenience for them for their brands to donate? And also, I think that in the policies, we must consider to promote education and awareness on all the intersectional collaboration and the benefits of the food rescue. Derek was also about the emissions. We have to put this matter on the focus. And this day, I think the foundations from increasing the amount of food recovery and improve the food security. And finally, here in Mexico, we're really glad to announce that the Red Bamex ensured that in Mexico position in the COP30 included the issue of the food loss waste through all the supply chains and also recognize the work of the food banks in Mexico. I think it's a huge step for us that our policy as a country acknowledge this.
I think I could not agree. I could not agree with you more there, Miguel. You know, I know we have laws that are punitive. I know we have laws that punish. But what I'm getting from you as well is that we need a balance, especially for this particular topic and issue. We need to incentivize you. We need to encourage you. We need to motivate you because we want to get the items from you to be able to give it to the stomachs that need it, right? So it's not
Yeah.
about necessarily punishing you for not doing it, but encouraging you to do it. And that is a typical strategy in behavior change work. We always focus on the do's rather than the don'ts, because we want, especially when we want to encourage a positive behavior. Yeah, so I really love that. And the fact that you said that Mexico's position as a country is the importance of food donation and food rescue. And so when you speak at things like COP30 and other international platforms, Mexico has a position where this is concerned. And I feel as a region, Derek, I think that's something that we can endeavor towards. Yeah. I would love to get your thoughts on that as well. So I'm going to ask you a two-fold question. One is your thoughts on as a regional position, because we have CARICOM, that's the whole purpose of having the Caribbean community. You know, how do you see us coming together as a region to support this work? And two, the other question, well, let me let you answer that first, and then I'll ask you the other question after. So how do you feel as a region we could come together to get this work done?
Well, regionally, we've been challenged with coming together for decades now. We see that. We live in the region. I have had the privilege of living in Jamaica for 10 years, living in the Eastern Caribbean for 4 years. So I really feel that I have above average understanding. The issues that we're having regionally is no different than the issues we have all the way down nationally and even down into our own organizations and even our own households. We typically focus on ourselves, and which is fine, but we shouldn't be focusing on ourselves or doing our thing to the detriment of others. And this is where the whole principles of this circular economy is coming in, and the basic definition of what is called sustainable development. And I wouldn't get into the whole, evolution of society and the norms and behaviors, because that is its own topic and challenge. However, it all runs into the same thing, in that if our leaders across the region, and not just in government, but private sector is very, very powerful. And of course, the NGO sectors, there's a tendency for us to think short term. So we're thinking month to month, quarter to quarter, even year to year is short term. But if you look back on, let's say your own life or your own business or your own company over the last 10 years, some people say, I could have done this a little better. But also it goes even beyond that. How do we work together? For some strange reason, in the Caribbean, as small island developing states, as we refer to, there's a tendency to do our own thing, even though we have, like most other countries do, limited resources. Even when I sit on the ISO technical committee for circular economy, and with 100 countries there, even the developed countries struggle with resources because it's all relative. Yet, if we were to actually sit together and figure out, okay, how can we literally, as to your question, how can we work together? But it requires leadership, it requires trust, and it does require that underlying policy framework. But it requires that ultimately is leadership, because leadership, you need courage, you have to be bold, you have to be also thinking way ahead. And you have to think for everybody, not just for yourself. So we tend to point a lot of our conversations to that leadership area. So even there's a couple of CARICOM bodies that I am familiar with, and I have been knocking on their door to say, hey, we should have a discussion, we should do a webinar, we should do, and at least plant those seeds, and where possible, grab those opportunities to bring people together, because there's that focus, shorter term thinking. They think in terms of what you call it, the election cycles, and 5 years is short for a country. So, but it's a multi-pronged approach. Typically, progress is made by several things happening at once. And people like yourself and Sweta and Miguel are doing their part, lead by example, but also try to encourage that collaboration. Because I notice we have people from all around the world in the audience, which is great, because sometimes it's the common regular people coming together that can make things happen, which is why we are teaming up with people from different countries who have technologies. Even our food donation side of things, we aren't looking to reinvent the wheel. We actually are in talks with a large organization that has decades of reputation and experience, and have a group of over 100 NGOs that distribute things to people that are challenged and need things. So, but we getting the attention of the policymakers are really important, and where possible, contribute to draft policies, as long and boring as they might be to read, but get involved. You know, I was really happy to hear what Miguel said, that they're able to get that, and that takes years of pressure, but you've got to be consistent behind it. And again, keep putting forward, try to speak their language as well, because recognize that they have a lot on their plate as well. How can we help you achieve your job by doing what we are advocating? Because typically they converge. It's just you have to use the right language.
Yeah, and to your point about, and thank you for that comment, Kadeen, in the chat. You know, I always feel that we are better together. And so that is also, and in order for Mexico to get to where it's at, the word leadership is really, really important there. And be willing to, you know, take a little flat, you know, as we like to say at home here, my back road, you could take a little licks, you know, because it is about all of us together. For your point, you know, don't think about yourself at the detriment of others. We are better together, and we can do this together. So thank you so much, Derek. I really appreciated that. One of the things, so I just have a question, Miguel. When I volunteered at the Maryland Food Bank, they were heavily focused on canned food, right? So you had tins of every bean you could think about. You had canned meat, so tuna, mackerel. What else did I see? I saw they had like some packaged, like in the little pouches thing. So is that similar in the food banks in Mexico? Do you all also do like fresh fruit and produce as well? I'm curious. That's a Shan question.
Yeah, don't worry. Yeah, I think it's very, very, very similar. We in our volunteer program, we go from the work on all the cleansing and redistribute and maybe make a box to maybe we receive also donations of knowledge. We invite people to give us some talks with our community. We have also a program with work with kids that it's called Nutrieros, that it's about educational program and nutritional educational program, and we invite them to be with the boys and interact and help them understand that their reality right now not necessarily going to be the reality in the future if you do some changes and get the focus on the importance of education. So we in our volunteer programs try to invite the people to knowledge. Also, they can give us some new ideas of what we could do different. Once we received from volunteer from architectural school, and they help us to retrieve a park that was abandoned, and we painted and we repaired the net of the basketball holes, and we tried to involve the community. All of we have some talents, and try to offer that talent to the community so we can develop it and help other people. But yes.
That's awesome. So guys, just a reminder, if we're almost coming down to the end, But if you have any quick questions that I can ask our guests, please feel free to ask them in the Q&A. So Derek, this was a follow-up question I had before, but I just wanted to ask Miguel that question. So if a bakery, supermarket comes to you today and says, Derek, I want to jump on board with Fed Up Caribbean. I have all of this excess food. It really bothers me. I realize that it is affecting my bottom line. What will the onboarding process look like for them if they were to come to you today and say they want to jump on board? What will that process look like, and what are some of the quick wins in the short term that they can expect?
No, that's a great question, because we actually have that happening real time right now. So what we would do once there's that, because we do most of the prospecting, and once there's interest, we then want to understand what is the problem they're trying to solve, and also look at it broader in terms of what they're trying to do, because we respect the fact that they are a business, they provide a service, they create employment, they're part of the whole socioeconomic fabric. So we typically would give a little bit of education so they understand also the bigger picture, and we figure out how what we do could help them achieve their objectives. So let's use a bakery as an example. If they have excess surplus food, we'll ask some basic questions that, okay, what are you doing to prevent it in the first place? You know, is it that you are planning your production in a particular way? What methods are you using? Are you using your point of sale technology to inform you of sales patterns that could help you be more accurate in your production? Because we understand retailers, they don't want customers to walk in and see the shelves empty. But at the same time, you want to minimize the excess food, surplus food. But once we've taken care of all of that, and of course help to sensitize their staff around it as well, we then look to say, okay, these are the solutions we have. Do you want to try and recover some of the costs? Go onto the platform, typically, yes. Deal with the concerns around brand reputation or around food safety, legal liability. Those things are typically quite simple to deal with, because we're basically facilitating more people to come into them and get this food at a lower price. And the fears that retailers tend to have, that they don't want to be known or have a reputation for having cheap or low quality food, that requires a conversation, and they will then realize that statistically, and again, going back to what Miguel is saying, you really want to have measurement so we can demonstrate to them that this is really minority, and what you gain in terms of your increased customer count, your reputation as to doing something that is good, because you also need to communicate it. You don't want to just leave it like that. Communicate the good that you're doing. Tends to address the issue as well. And we would typically pilot it as well. So they don't just jump straight into it. We'll say, okay, let's focus on these particular products that you have any majority of problems with, and we work it out for a time period, and we get it rolling that way. In the case of the other technologies, we do testing, like there's wholesalers of fruit or primary producers. We actually do pilot testing to see the impact of the shelf life extension technology. And but we have to bring data and evidence and do hand in hand, crawl before you walk, before you run type of thing. But the key thing is that the engagement, and we take the time to better understand their problems, their concerns, and what they want to achieve. And we take a multi-pronged approach to it. So it's a combination of, yes, the tools and the technology we have, but also the know-how, experience, and that building that relationship and trust to work together, because that is a key component. It's not strictly technology only.
Right. And so guys, what I'm going to share what I'm also getting from what Derek just said. So if you're not familiar, so there is a food waste hierarchy. There is a waste management hierarchy, but specifically for food waste, prevention sits at the top. So when Derek was just talking about, we're asking them, what are you doing to prevent this from happening? To prevent you from always having excess at the end of your day. I remember seeing a video on YouTube with a baker, and she makes donuts. And every single day she will have excess donuts. And sometimes I talk to the screen. You all don't judge me, okay? And I'm saying, if you know on certain days some things sell better than others, why are you still making so many of that particular thing on that day that is always extra, that you always have to think, oh my God, what am I going to do with this extra? And I'm like, so you didn't think of that in the beginning? I mean, one of the things, the reason why I like to watch her is because she makes gluten-free donuts, because I have a gluten sensitivity. But at the end of the day, clearly her clientele is not majority gluten sensitive, celiac related people. So she always has the excess gluten donuts. And I'm like, if I was there, I would have take all. But you know, it just goes back to understanding prevention is always the first line of defense. After that comes feeding people, feeding animals, then processing. So you see where composting and biogas digestion and all of these things sit. And then failing all of those, then we get to the landfill. So Miguel and Derek, I am going to ask you our closing question. So I had a closing question, but I think Kadine's question is better than mine. So I'm going to ask Kadine's question instead. If you can wave a magic wand and get anything you needed, what is the most important thing that you would ask for to amplify your organization's efforts in 2026? So if you could wave a magic wand and get anything you needed, it's kind of similar to my question in a sense. Good thinking, Kadeen. What is the most important thing that you would ask for to amplify your organization's efforts in 2026? So Miguel, I'll do you first.
Okay. I think that one of the things is to make the people understand the amount of the problem. If we not measured, it can be salvaged. So I ask to all the different brands and hotels and agencies to begin to wait and record all the food that can be recollect and avoid the further loose waste and end on the trash. I think is one of the first things. And also, I'd like to invite them to know it is very different when you gave a PowerPoint and showed maybe a video that when we invite them to be with us and participate in the community deliberate. I think that and I think the food banks, we have a problem. We don't have enough resources to do a great marketing and communication plan, and we have to work one by one. And we're always happy that they visit us. I think that we're gonna start talking about the problem on daily basis in every kind of forum, with my family, with my friends, in a restaurant, of the people that are in the next table. I think the acknowledge and the information and the education is one of the key performance things that we like to have more in 2026.
Awesome. Thank you, Miguel. And Derek?
Well, I love Kadine's question. I think that is fantastic, and had me thinking. So that one thing I would like or love is to get in a room with all the heads of government across the Caribbean and heads of private sector, and let them know that, look, we all have problems. We're all struggling. And again, especially when we have external shocks, whether it's a hurricane or war in Europe or tariffs or whatever it is, the solutions are right in front of us. Start with waste reduction before you jump into all these other fancy investments, which are also important. Start with trying to maintain the value or maximizing the value with what you have in the first place. And that is what I would love, because I believe by then getting those points across as effectively as possible to policymakers, company owners, executives, board members, that they then will go back to their respective countries and companies and say, hey, let me look at what's happening in my own organization. How can I then work with others in my value chain or my sectors? And then you could start to get that cross collaboration as well. Because the more mature organizations and countries recognize we can't do this by ourselves. It doesn't make sense doing this by ourselves. We can share and collaborate in different ways, capacity building, information exchange, and even materials, you know, start to take this more circular approach to and maximizing value, reduce waste, and you will find that you will have more resources to deal with some of the bigger problems that we can't avoid. And that's what I would like, I love rather. So thanks to Kadeen for that question. And thanks for Shan for using that question.
You're welcome, Derek. And so guys, that brings us to the end of our conversation today. I want to thank you. I know I see some of my friends, my best friend's sister is also on the call today. So I really appreciate her being here and supporting me in this way. But thank you to everyone who decided to take time out of their schedules to be with us to continue this conversation around food donation, food rescue. Derek and Miguel, thank you for showing us that it is possible. As I told you, I'm the eternal optimist, right? So I appreciate you both, and I look forward to having many, many more conversations, working together, whatever that means, whatever that looks like. I really hope that we can continue to spread this message. Guys, I hope that you enjoyed the conversation, that you got something from it, to have your wheels churning and thinking as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to Sweetha for any closing remarks, and look forward to the webinar is also going to be put live on YouTube. So once the video has been finished rendering, I'm going to share it with Derek, with you and Miguel, and everybody else. You're going to get it as well once you've registered. So over to you, Sweetha, for your closing remarks.
Thank you, Shan. Thank you, Miguel. And thank you, Derek. This was a very important conversation. And like Shan mentioned, this is for the audience. It's the recording is going to go up on YouTube. Please sign up for the Be Wastewise newsletter. You'll find it on the website, wastewise.be. And you will find all the speakers on LinkedIn as well. And I already shared CL Environmental Solutions' website. So please connect with the speakers. Please connect with Be Wastewise and share the recording once it's up. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys. Remember, it's not always about doing things better, but sometimes you simply need to do better things. So see you in the next video, everyone. Bye.
Bye.